Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Our top stories tonight. Health authorities expect a surge in the number of people seeking treatment at emergency wards for winter illnesses. The mainland could see people get reinfected with COVID as new subvariants are detected. And 14 people are killed in a shooting at a prison in Mexico. The hospital authority expressed concern over increasing pressure on public hospitals. This comes as health officials expect a daily load of around 5,000 people to seek treatment at emergency wards in the coming days after the year-end holiday. Macy Mock reports.
Public hospital services are already hit by COVID infections and winter illnesses. The hospital authority expressed concern that it will face further pressure as more people are expected to seek treatment in the coming days. After the year-end holiday, the number of people waiting at accident and emergency wards might go up by 8,000, reaching 5,000 per day. Simon Tang, Cluster Services Director, said hospitals will increase temporary beds and speed up discharge procedures to shorten the waiting time. He said currently only a small number of patients had to wait for 12 hours before being admitted, but most still have to wait for 4 to 8 hours. Considering the long hours, the hospital authority has urged patients with minor symptoms to visit private doctors. New COVID cases dropped for the third consecutive day to 20,230, but COVID-related deaths have surged to 74, highest since April last year. Meanwhile, the University of Hong Kong estimated an even higher number of infections, reaching up to 150,000 to 200,000 people in the city caught COVID per day. Talking on a radio program, Jin Dong-yan, professor at the School of Biomedical Sciences of the university, said cases are not expected to rise drastically after the first phase of the border reopening with mainland takes effect this coming Sunday. But the epidemic has become endemic, he said. However, care homes are facing another challenge due to a new government rule. Grace Lee, chief executive of Our True Nursing Home, feared that staff in care homes could get infected, as triple-jabbed care home residents with minor or no symptoms are now asked to stay in nursing homes rather than holding centers. On the other hand, the government warned people not to stockpile drugs containing paracetamol and assured that there is enough stable supply of medicines to relieve pain and fever. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
Starting from coming Sunday, telephone hotline for the Leave Home Safe app and its mobile support booths in MTR stations will cease operation. The government-run mobile support stations will be removed from 25 MTR stations soon. There were only 10 booths initially when the help measure was first introduced in December 2021. A staff said people had asked for help in relation to the Vaccine Pass QR code, but fewer people visited the booths after the Vaccine Pass was dropped. Senior Hong Kong politician and lawyer Marriott Tam said Beijing's interpretation of the national security law does not compromise the power of the judiciary. Tam said Article 14 and 47 of the security law provided a clearer explanation on how the legislation should be used and has not affected the power of both the chief executive and the Committee for Safeguarding National Security, she added. Beijing's ruling last week put the ball in Hong Kong's court to decide whether foreign lawyers can defend people charged under the national security law. Police have arrested a 22-year-old woman on suspicion of sedition. The woman, who is from the mainland, placed flowers and candles outside a department store in Causeway Bay to mourn the attacker who killed himself after stabbing a police officer in July 2021. She also displayed a picture with seditious wordings. The police arrested her after she continued with the act, despite repeated warnings. Officers from the Wanchai Crime Unit are handling the case. The 55-year-old driver of the double-decker bus that overturned in Cheongkwon yesterday was released on bail. The driver was arrested for dangerous driving after a preliminary investigation. The damaged vehicle was retrieved from the accident site and taken to the police detention and examination center in Kowloon Bay. Operating on city bus route 796P, the bus lost control and overturned near Lohas Park, injuring 13 passengers. The Catholic community in the city mourned the death of Pope Benedict. People who wish to pay respects can visit the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in mid-levels. Bishop Stephen Cho was among the first to write a condolence message for the former pope. A requiem mass will be held at the cathedral on Wednesday evening. Starting today, the former pontiff's body lay in state at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. The funeral on Thursday will be led by Pope Francis. The mainland could see a rise in people getting reinfected with COVID as Omicron's variants BQ.1 and XBB are detected. This came as some researchers said the latest round of infections has likely peaked in major cities, but rural areas could reach the peak during the Lunar New Year.
Questions have risen over possible reinfection on the mainland after authorities detected Omicron subvariants BQ.1 and XBB in at least 9 provinces. Most of the people infected with the new strain were inbound travelers. The new subvariants have shown greater ability to evade immunity from a previous infection or vaccine and have been circulating in the US and Europe earlier. Responding to concerns of repeat infections, Wang Xinyu, an infectious disease expert at Huashan Hospital of Fudan University, said that it could be possible due to the subvariant's strengthened features. The first dependent factor is how much overlap there is between the newer variants one encounters compared with the current ones of BA.5 and BF.7 strains. Will have stronger protection against reinfection if there are higher overlaps, he said. Adding the second determining factor will be the different antibody levels within individuals, which will gradually drop over a period of time after the first infection, thereby increasing the risk of reinfection. Wang said the new variants, however, do not have a different structure or account for higher death rate. He stressed the importance of vaccination, citing it will lead to milder symptoms. Meanwhile, researchers from Ruijin Hospital of Shanghai Jiaotong University School of Medicine and Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center projected that infections in urban areas of Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Chongqing have likely peaked at the end of 2022. But provinces of Sichuan, Shanxi, Gansu, Qinghai might hit the peak around mid or late January during the Lunar New Year, especially in rural areas or small cities and towns.
Armed gunmen killed 14 people at a prison in the border city of Ciudad Juarez in northern Mexico. The gunmen opened fire upon arriving at the prison around 7 a.m., killing 10 guards and 4 prisoners. Another 24 inmates managed to escape in the commotion, and 13 others were injured. Authorities suspect the attackers to be members of a drug cartel. Shortly before the attack, police officers came under fire on a street near the prison, but it remains unknown whether the two incidents are linked to each other. The city has witnessed years of violent clashes between rival drug cartels, killing thousands of people in the past decade. Brazil's leftist leader Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has pledged to rebuild the country with the people after he was sworn in as president of the fiercely polarized nation for a historical third term. Thousands of people lined the streets of the capital, Brasilia, to mark the political veteran's comeback.
Tens of thousands of supporters dressed in red, which represents the Workers' Party, flooded the streets of the capital Brasilia since early morning, cheering loudly as Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's motorcade made its way to the official swearing-in ceremony. The 77-year-old politician, widely known as Lula, was elected to office for the third time after a 12-year hiatus, as he defeated former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro in one of the most closely fought polls the country had ever witnessed. Diversity and inclusion was a message at the inauguration, as a group representing different segments of society, including an indigenous leader, a black boy, and a disabled influencer, presented Lula with a presidential sash on the ramp of the presidential palace. Traditionally, the outgoing president does the honors of passing on the sash, but Jair Bolsonaro abandoned his last official duty after flying to the U.S. on Friday. The sash was presented by 33-year-old female garbage collector Aline Souza, signaling Lula's policy for working to give a better life to the common people. Earlier, the president of Brazil's Senate presided over Lula's swearing-in, watched by members of the Congress. He said, "I promise to keep, defend, and fulfill the Constitution, obey the laws, promote the general well-being of the Brazilian people, uphold the union, integrity, and independence of Brazil." The veteran leader won the election on a mandate to improve the life of poor Brazilians, aiming to lift 33 million people out of hunger and over 100 million out of poverty. He condemned the Bolsonaro administration for failing to properly respond to the COVID emergency, which led to nearly 700,000 deaths, accusing him of committing genocide, which will be thoroughly investigated. He also pledged to revoke Bolsonaro's controversial gun laws and to reach zero deforestation in the Amazon by the end of the decade. The event started with a minute of silence to honor football legend Pelé and former Pope Benedict XVI. Around 8,000 security personnel were deployed in Brasilia amid fears that some supporters of Bolsonaro could seek to disrupt proceedings. Earlier, a man was arrested while trying to enter the secure area of the inauguration, carrying a knife and fireworks.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with Beijing's ambassador to Washington, Qin Gang, before the Chinese diplomat's departure from the U.S. Blinken hoped to maintain open lines of communication as Qin returned to Beijing to take up his new job as China's foreign minister. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, meanwhile, stated that Qin and Blinken had conducted several candid, in-depth, and constructive meetings in the past. Qin hopes to continue to work closely with Blinken, who will visit Beijing soon to push for better China-U.S. relationship. On to the weather now. It will be overcast with sunny intervals on the first working day of the year. Temperatures will range between 16 and 20 degrees. Mostly fine and dry in the next couple of days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Monday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Thanks for watching. Good night.